So today is the start of something new here on our channel, and we are calling this segment Super Bowl Sunday. Several of you wanted to see my soup recipes that I can for us for the fall and the winter months, and I've decided that, yep, it's time that I take you along. Now, this is November, but going forward, I will be doing Super Bowl Sunday in the month of October. Now, it's still pretty warm for us in October, and even right now outside, it's pretty warm outside in November, okay? So let's go ahead and get to it. I'm not going to belabor the point. This is going to be a very detailed recipe, and I'm just going to take you all along with me as I go. All right, you all. So the first thing I have here is 5 pounds of ground turkey. Feel free to half in this recipe, okay? Now, this ground turkey needs to be seasoned before we can get it started. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and preheat my oven to 400 degrees. All right. One thing I'm going to mention here is that you can season the meatballs however you like, okay? But for me, I want them to have more of a sausage flavor. So my spices are going to be a little bit different. All right. But you can feel free to season the meatballs however you want them to taste. You do just that. To start, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of garlic. You can use granulated garlic or you can use garlic powder. Next, we're going to add a tablespoon of onion powder. Now I am going to add 2 tablespoons. Ooh, that's okay. Of ground thyme. Next, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of ground fennel. Oops. I love fennel. Now, this is optional, but I'm also going to add 2 tablespoons of fennel seed. If you want this to be a bit spicy, you can add some red pepper flakes. This is optional. I'm just going to add what I have left, which is roughly 1.5 tablespoons. Next, I'm going to add a tablespoon of ground clove, 2 tablespoons of salt, half a tablespoon of white pepper, or more or less, whatever you like. This is totally optional. I'm going to add in a couple of tablespoons of Tony's Creole seasoning. Use the no salt if you can. Next, I'm going to go in with a couple of tablespoons of smoked paprika. Now for this part, because I do want a sausage flavor, I have 3 tablespoons, 3.5 tablespoons of brown sugar. And now I'm going to go in with about 1/4 teaspoon of molasses. I'm almost out of molasses. And I'm going to whisk that in until it's well combined. Now we're ready. Now we're going to go ahead and add that sugar and molasses into our turkey. Feel free to use packed brown sugar, dark or light, if you don't want to make it from scratch, okay? And now we're just going to mix all of this together until all of the spices are well combined into your ground turkey. Feel free to use this recipe with ground lamb, ground beef, I'm using the ground turkey. That pepper really got to me. Okay, so what I'm doing here, I just heated up my skillet, and I'm just going to take a small piece of this, just a small piece, and pop it in the pan and let that cook for just a minute or few minutes or so, because I'm pressing it down flat too, so it can go ahead and cook. And I'm testing out the flavor because I want that sausage flavor, so I just want to make sure that it tastes like I want it to taste. You can skip this part if you like, but this is what I like to do to make sure that my turkey sausage is going to taste exactly the way that I want it. And if you really want a deeper sausage flavor, I would recommend seasoning this the day before and then covering it maybe with some plastic wrap and refrigerating it overnight. You can even refrigerate it up to 2 days if you like. So that was really good. Very good, mild sausage flavor. Like I said, if you want it more intense, let it sit overnight. Now I'm using my medium-sized scoop here. Let me show you. So this is my large scoop. This is the small scoop. That's the medium. So I'm using my medium-sized scoop. The reason why I'm not using the smaller one is because when you use the smaller one, you got to remember that the meatballs will shrink. Oops. They will shrink during the cooking process. Okay. Now, make sure I get it packed in there. They are going to shrink. I see I'm going to have to use my hand to help form these into a ball. Let me just use my hand. I can use the scoop as a measure to kind of keep them all uniformed. So I am going to get all of these formed on the baking mat, and then we're going to get them into our preheated 400-degree oven. The meatballs are ready. Now we are going to go ahead and get them in our preheated 400-degree oven. And we are going to let these babies cook in this oven 15 minutes. You can also fry these on the stove if you like. You'll have to do it in batches, but this is so much easier. Now I can move on to next steps. Now I'm getting ready to peel, dice, and wash 5 pounds of gold potatoes. Okay, so let's get these peeled, and then we're going to move on to next steps. It's been 15 minutes. Ooh, nice and hot. Go ahead and get these out of the oven. Turn that off. If you touch them, they're still going to be somewhat soft, but they will have just a little bit of firmness to them. And that's exactly what you want. You want them to be somewhat firm. Okay. Okay. Now that the meatballs are out of the oven, I'm going to go ahead now and weigh out about 1 to 1.5 pounds of potatoes. And I'm going to do something separate with those. That's 1.4 pounds. That's perfect. I'm going to sit these. I'm done with the scale now. So I'm going to sit this to the side. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to go ahead and chop these up, and I'm going to chop them up really, really fine. Okay. And there's a reason for that. And we're going to get into that. And once we get these diced up, we're going to go over all of the other ingredients. Okay. So we can get them combined. Okay. Now we are going to go ahead and go over our ingredients. I have already chopped up all the vegetables because I didn't want to put y'all through all that. So let's go ahead and put this canning recipe together. Now in this pot right here, I have 4 quarts of turkey bone broth. Now, if you don't have your own, that's fine. All you have to do is just get yourself some bouillon, or it doesn't have to be turkey. It could be chicken. It could be whatever you like. Okay. But in fact, what I used in here after I used my 4 quarts of turkey broth, and it is broth that I canned from some turkey bones that I used. Okay. And so this is a roasted chicken, um, better than bouillon base. And I added a tablespoon of that to my 4 quarts of turkey bone broth because I wanted to deepen the flavor, but I also wanted a little bit of chicken base in here because it adds a different flavor to this soup. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed if you mix the two. Okay, you're going to love it. Trust me. Now, also, you can use about between 10 to 12 ounces of spinach. Now, I roughly chopped my spinach, as you could see, okay, because I don't want no long, big pieces of spinach in the soup. So, this is a rough chop, and you're going to need about 10 to 12 ounces. Also, you're going to need about 4 to 5 shredded carrots, 3 stalks of celery, 3 medium bell peppers, and 3 medium onion. I have that one, maybe in a quarter pound, I think, of the finely diced gold potatoes. And then I have the rest of my potatoes right here. Now, I have turned the fire on my broth and I'm getting ready to bring it to a boil. And I also have my cast iron here on the stove because we're going to saute our vegetables. But I'm going to add these potatoes to this broth. I'm also going to add the carrots to this broth. Just get them in there. Now we're going to give this a stir, okay? We're going to bring that up to a boil. Be sure you put a lid on. Now, to this skillet, I'm going to add in this is avocado oil, just about a tablespoon or so. I'm also going to grab, I'm almost out, but that's fine. I'm also going to grab a really good tablespoon of butter. And I got that on high heat. I need to turn that down some. Add a little bit more butter. And my butter is actually starting to burn because my skillet was so hot. But that's okay. Now let's go ahead and add to these peppers. And we're just going to cook these until they are translucent. That's why it didn't matter that my butter was trying to burn, because that's just going to add some beautiful brown butter flavor to this. It's not burnt. It was just brown butter, and it just adds a nuttier flavor. Now, you know what? I forgot to put in my celery. Can't forget my celery. Let's get the celery in there too. Now to this, I'm going to add some salt, and you can do this to taste, or you don't have to do it at all. I'm going to add in, this is about a half a tablespoon of granulated garlic, and then some white pepper to taste. The spicier you want this to be, the more pepper you can add, the more pepper flakes, the more cayenne pepper you can add as well, okay? So I'm just going to give that a toss. I got my fire back up on high now. And we're going to get these veggies cooked down until they are translucent. This is going to take about 3 to 5 minutes, okay? This soup is really a labor of love because it does take a lot of work. You do put a lot into this particular soup, but I can promise you, you won't be disappointed. So this is going to simmer here for just a bit, and then we will be right on back. What I'm going to go ahead and do here, and this is totally optional, I'm going to add some Italian seasoning to my vegetables, and you can put in a few teaspoons or a tablespoon and just give it a stir. Now my broth over here is boiling. My jars are in the oven. They're hot because we're just about ready to start canning this up. Oh, that smells so good. I love that. I'll take my lid off here. And to my broth, I'm even going to add some Italian seasoning. Maybe a good tablespoon and a half to my broth. That is doing its thing. Now, why did I dice up the potatoes so small? Because these small potatoes are going to break down and they are really going to thicken this soup. Once it cools down, it's going to be so super thick, but not while it's canning. Now that our vegetables are ready, I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of what I have in garlic butter, which is going to be about a couple of tablespoons of garlic butter to the middle here. It is truly time for me to can some more garlic butter because I go through it so fast. I use garlic butter on so many different things. And I use the garlic butter because I didn't want to run in and grab another jar of my regular butter. Now, I could take all of this out to make room for this, but I'm going to do it a little bit at a time. I'm going to put a little bit of spinach in, and I'm just going to give that a stir. And we're going to let it cook down. Make sure you toss it around. It should cook down rather quickly. I'm going to add in another nice handful of the spinach. Give that a mix. Gonna keep stirring this because we want that spinach to wilt all the way down. Oh, what am I doing? Keep the lid on there. Okay, all of our spinach is just about wilted. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go in with the rest of the spinach. Right in the middle of the skillet. Come on, spinach. I need everybody out. Everybody out. Okay. And we're going to give that a mix around until it is good, combined, and wilted in. That's what we want. I'm going to turn the heat off, okay? Because the heat is from the other vegetables is going to do its job on the rest of the spinach. This is our mixture. This is what it looks like. And yes, it smells absolutely amazing. Let's go on over to our broth. Yep, bam, it's ready too. Notice we haven't added our big potatoes in yet. That's coming, don't worry. All right, let's go ahead and get it all jarred up. I have so many projects going on in this kitchen until I forgot about this part. So I have my stick blender here, and this is the part where I make my soup nice and creamy. With those potatoes. Just go through the wholesome. Don't burn yourself. Now, if you have a Vitamix or something like that, where you can pour all of the liquid in and just blend it smooth, you can do that too, okay? Woo! Remember not to lift up the stick because my goodness. And that's it. Now we're good. We're ready. This is really gonna thicken up this soup once it starts to cool down. You won't notice it until it cools down, but it will start to thicken up this soup, okay? All right, now we're ready to start jarring everything up. I absolutely cannot believe that I have filmed all of this footage without my microphone being on. You see that beautiful microphone that I have up there on the right side of your screen near my shoulder? I'm just talking away, but there's no microphone. So let me just go ahead and tell you what I'm doing. I have my jars in my oven heating up. I have my pressure canner on the stove. It's nice and warm, getting hot. And I have my potatoes, you know, the nice chunky potatoes. They're on the counter along with my meatballs and the broth that I made with the smaller diced potatoes and the carrots. So I've taken my jars out of the oven and we're going to go ahead and get ready to jar them up. Make sure you have all of your tools, your debubbler, your jar lifter. You're also going to need a magnet, and don't do what I'm about to do. Oh, and you're going to need something warm on your hands to handle the jars as you take them out of the oven if they're hot, okay? But as you can see, I did it again. I forgot my lids. And I still simmer my lids a little bit because it does help. So now let's go ahead and get all of this jarred up. So I'm adding a little bit of broth to the jar here. It really doesn't matter how you jar this soup up. It's going to work out perfectly fine, okay? So I'm just adding a little bit of broth to each one of the jars. About a ladle full is all I'm adding here. And that also kind of helps with, you know, the air that could kind of be in the bottom of the jar if you add a little broth to a soup like this. But I found that as long as you have enough space in the jar to debubble, it'll be just fine. So I've added a nice big half cup of those chunky potatoes to the jar. And I'm also going to add about 3 to 4 meatballs per jar. And then I'm going in with a quarter of a cup of that delicious spinach and vegetable mix. I tasted it and I cannot begin to tell you how delicious this mixture is. My goodness, I could make a soup with that all by itself. Yes, I can. All right, so now let's go ahead and fill the jars up with this delicious broth. And I'll tell you something else about this broth. If you were to blend the potatoes, the carrots, the bell pepper, onion, all of that, that would be a completely different soup. I'm telling you, I call it my get well soup. I have 2 recipes for a get well soup, and that is one of them. And I'm here to tell you it is amazing. Now I went ahead and grabbed myself a little bitty, what do you call that thingamajiggy? You know, the thingamajiggy right there that was on the counter. My tongues, I grabbed my tongues because I did not want to keep grabbing the meatballs with my hand. I need to keep my hands clean, okay? And what I decided to do was add a few more potatoes because, well, I felt like I was being a little stingy with the jars. But Mr. H said, hey, it's soup. You can be stingy with it. Don't nobody need a ton of meatballs in there. It's a soup. It's okay. And so I decided that I would just kind of slow up, and I'll show you why in the end. But I'm adding in the broth and I'm filling it up to a 1-inch headspace. Okay, that's very important. Right underneath that rim of the jar where the 1-inch head spacing is, that's where you want to fill the jar. Trust me. All right, you don't want siphoning in the end. Now, go ahead and wipe your rims. And you're going to need some vinegar, okay, to wipe your rims. So make sure that you're using vinegar because we do have butter and oil in this jar. So make sure that you're wiping your rims with the vinegar, putting on your lids, and putting on your bands. Make sure those bands are fingertip tight, okay? Fingertip tight. And into the pressure canner they will go. Now, everything in the jars is hot, so don't put them in a canner with cold water. Make sure you're turning that water, the fire on and putting it on low so that your water will be nice and not really warm and not hot, but just kind of right on the verge. You know, we want those two to match as closely as possible. Now keep those other jars in the oven. Don't take them all out at one time. You're only going to take out a couple of jars at a time to work with because you want to keep the jars hot. So here again, you see I'm adding in the potatoes to the jar, and a good heaping half cup is what I added. And once I get the potatoes in, I'm going to go in with my meatballs again. And the meatballs are so flavorful. They smell so good. And the Italian seasoning really just set these things off right along with that sausage flavor, with the spices that I added at the beginning of the video. But again, I was feeling a little stingy. So instead of adding my normal 4 meatballs, I went ahead and I added 5 to 1. And I'm going to pay for that in the end because one of my jars at the end will only have 2 meatballs. So you know what I need to do? I need to stick to my recipe. That's what I need to do. Because I know what I'm doing. So I should just stick to the recipe. All right, so now let's go ahead and fill the jars with broth. We did add in our spinach and vegetables to this jar already, and we're just filling it up with the broth. Look at how amazing that looks. Look at that broth as it goes into the jar. Take note of how thick and creamy that broth looks. That's the reason why I take my time and finely dice those potatoes. You can even shred them if you like and put them inside of your broth and just bring it to a boil and blend it as best you can, as smooth as you can. And that will give you that creamy looking broth inside of the soup and in the jar. It just makes it look so amazing. And because it's fully flavored, it tastes so good as well. So now what we're going to do is just go ahead and fill the jars all the way up to that 1-inch headspace like we did before. And to all of our newbie canners, remember to debubble. You want to get all of the air out of the jars, okay? If you don't, what can happen is that your jar will fail to seal. So make sure that you debubble, get all of the air out, and then wipe the rims well again, because we're using fats in this, the oil and the butter, and we also used a little bit of avocado oil when we were sauteing our vegetables. That oil will prevent your jars from sealing if it happens to get on the rims. So use the vinegar, wipe the rims of the jar. Okay, now let's get our lids on. And maybe y'all didn't notice, but I'm doing something that I rarely ever do, and that is I'm using my wide mouth jars for my soup. I never ever do that. And I did it this time because I wasn't paying attention when I was grabbing my jars, getting them ready for canning. And I just made the decision, you know what? I'm going to go with what I got. And I'll pay closer attention next time. So I got wide mouth, which is primarily used for things like chicken legs and other meats and things like that. But I hardly ever use these jars for soups. Okay. All right, so now I'm just continuing the process, taking my jars out 2 at a time, getting the meatballs in to each one of these jars. And try, if you want, you do not have to use 3, 4, 5 meatballs. In fact, you can use 1 or 2. It's up to you, okay? You can make this soup your own, okay? The key thing here is that you combine the ingredients in the jar in a way that you would love them and in a way that your family will love them. So for some people, that might not be but a pint-sized jar instead of a quart with one meatball and vegetables inside and the broth. It's totally up to you. Take this soup and make it your own. But for me, I go ahead and put the four in there. And you can take them and mash them up in there if you like once you open the jar and sit down and eat it that way. But this soup is going to be such an amazing addition to my Super Bowl Sunday meals, especially in the fall and winter months as it gets colder outside. And feel free to leave in the comment section below your favorite soups for the winter. I would love to know what it is that you enjoy eating in the winter months, okay? And yep, soups are top of the list. Navy bean soup for us is probably our number one. And then we have a few others, my homemade chicken and dumpling soup. If you haven't seen that video, it's in my pressure cannon playlist. Go on over and have a look at the almost chicken and dumpling soup recipe that tastes so good in the winter months, you all. Also, if you run low on the broth, like I have done here, I think I was a few quarts shy of being able to get all 12 of my jars done. But that's okay. Remember, I told you I added that roasted chicken better than bouillon base to my turkey bone broth? Well, all I did was make an additional few quarts using that base as well. And that allowed me to be able to top off any remaining jars to make sure they were all filled with the broth and full of flavor. Okay. All right. Make sure we wipe those rims and get our lids on and our bands on. And we're going to get those last remaining jars inside of the pressure canner. Okay. Now, I'm using my All-American pressure canner here. And what you must remember with an All-American, you must oil this canner. The rim of this canner, along with the rim of the lid, make sure you put oil. I'm using avocado. Make sure you put oil on the rim and lids of this, because if you don't, that metal to metal contact, once it gets really hot, it could easily cause your lid and the canner to become stuck together. And then you got to send it all the way back to the manufacturer so they can fix it for you. All right. So just make sure after every so many batches of canning, you take the time to re-oil those lids, the lid and the canner. Now I'm putting the wing nuts on here. And when you put the wing nuts on an All-American pressure canner, you put them on opposite each other, fingertip tight, right? Fingertip tight opposite each other. And once they're on, then you go back and you tighten them up in the same order that you put them on. Make sure that that lid is level all the way around, that you have a good seal, okay? I have my fire on high heat and I centered my canner over the burner. And what we're going to do is let this canner build up pressure. Once it builds up enough pressure, it's going to start spewing out some steam, okay? And yeah, it might sputter a bit, but we're not looking for sputters. We're looking for a steady flow of steam. And once you get that steady flow of steam going, you're going to set a timer for 10 full minutes. And after it's vented for 10 full minutes, then you can come back with your weight here. Now, for my altitude, I use 10 pounds of pressure. You see me how I'm dipping back. I'm showing you for my altitude is 10 pounds of pressure. But if you don't know your altitude, go to Google, put in your zip code and just say, hey, what's my altitude? And Google will let you know. And then you'll know exactly how much weight you need to put on that canner.
Okay, now my weight is jiggling. I'm going to start gently reducing the temperature here. And I do that just a little bit at a time. I don't do it all at once, but I just give it a few seconds to start slowly adjusting to the temperature change here. And I know exactly where my stove needs to be so that this weight will jiggle just maybe 2 to 3 times a minute or so. And once I get it there, it'll start to settle down. Now I have my timer set for 90 minutes, okay? So I will bring you all back when it's time to get these babies out of the canner.
All right, so it's been about an hour and 20 minutes. There we go. Good gracious. Loosen up these wing nuts here. And we're going to go ahead and get these out of the canner. I'm going to slowly release this and grab my towel and get them out. There we go. Release some of that steam. Take my lid off. Get them out. All right, that's gonna do it. It is late in the evening, but we are finally done. These jars will sit just like this overnight, and tomorrow morning I will come in and give them all a bath and maybe shake them around to just kind of combine the ingredients again. And then from there, I will put these babies in my cabinet and I will have my soup ready to go. Now there is some separation. As you could see, we have the thickening of the potato mix and all of that on the bottom. And then we have the chunky mix here and the meatballs in the middle, and the spinach and other vegetables have kind of floated to the top. And that's because they're lighter than the other ingredients in the jar. Let me show you what I mean by that. So you could see how the potato mixture has thickened at the bottom. You see that? And then you have the thick chunky potatoes here. You have the meatballs here. And then you have the spinach, the celery, the bell pepper, and onion all floating around in the top here. And as this cools down, I will just kind of be able to kind of turn this around, kind of like I do when I'm canning my butter, how I have to give it a toss to combine, and I have to do that for quite some time. But with this, I don't have to do it for long. All I have to do is come in and just give it a little shake and then sit it back down, and then that should do it. Once we mix it all back up together again, it'll stay that way, okay? And this will thicken up even more so in the jar as it starts to cool down. But y'all, that's gonna do it. I hope you liked the video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to share this information as well, okay? All right, y'all, that's gonna do it. Thanks for watching Homestead Heart. Peace and blessings. I will see y'all in the next video. It smells so good in this house. It smells like fall. It smells like wintertime comfort food in the house. It's the next day. The jars literally just came out of a very hot water bath with some Dawn dish soap, because I use Dawn to clean my jars, to degrease my jars. It does such a wonderful job. That's my use for the Dawn dish soap. And it helps because you don't want grease settling around the jars, especially if you've had any kind of siphoning, because then the jars would develop mold. And I know you don't want that. So make sure that you clean them well, and then let them sit on the counter to dry. Once they dry, then I'll come back and I will just write on the lid, label it for whatever it is that's in the jar. And I do put my bands back on, but when I put my bands on, look. Now, listen to that. I got that tip from Alaska Prepper because, you know, using all of these bands, you don't have anywhere for all these bands to go. So when you put the band back on the jar, it makes the perfect placeholder for the jar, for the band. It's not on tight, so it won't have any effect on jars that may have a seal to break. It's not gonna stop that jar from showing you that, hey, the lid is not on, okay? But I do have a perfect placeholder for that band. So y'all, that's gonna do it. This soup looks so good. Look at that. See, I gotta be careful because the band literally just picked right on up over there. Look at that. That's some good looking soup. All right, that's it. I hope y'all enjoy the recipe.